Testing, mic check. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, mic check. Test. All right. So this is once again on the historicity of Jesus, chapter 3, right? Um, so if you have been following my channel, you'll know the last video I put up was a recording on the ascension of Isaiah. The reason that I put that up is so that you could get a background knowledge of the text itself, because chapter 3 is pretty much all about the ascension of Isaiah. There's a second part of chapter 3 which discusses the two types of theories on Jesus, mythicists versus historicists. But the bulk of the chapter is about the book of Isaiah. I mean the ascension of Isaiah. And if you've never read it, if you just take Carrier's word for it, you just kind of take Carrier's word for it. So I put up a rendition of it the other day, and listening to Carrier must have consulted all the available texts that were out there, because the version that was read clearly is a little bit different, or has added qualities to it that Carrier didn't cover. So go ahead and go back and check out the Ascension of Isaiah. Either get the PDF yourself, download it, read it yourself, listen to it being read on my channel. However it goes, if you're interested in learning about Carrier's position, go ahead and do that. However, it is interesting. I definitely recommend it, simply because it's another Christian text, and it gives you an insight into the ideas that Christians held in emergent Christianity, which is what we're studying here. All right. So the Ascension of Isaiah, it's an apocryphal work, meaning it's a religious text that's not included in the canonical Bible. Most likely composed either in the first or second century. So it's an early work. It's not a later Christian writing. And then the text is pseudepigraphal, meaning false claims to authorship by the prophet Isaiah, much like how the book of Daniel claims to be authored by the prophet Daniel, but more than likely is not Daniel, right? The narrative revolves around Isaiah's mystical ascent into the heavens, where he witnesses and learns divine secrets, a thing common in early Jewish and apocalyptic literature, very similar to the Book of Enoch. Very similar to the Book of Enoch. As a matter of fact, I actually kind of want to do a comparison between the ascension of Isaiah and the Book of Enoch, because there's definitely similarities between the two. Like the book of Daniel, the Ascension of Isaiah is a work of pseudepigraphy, creating a link to ancient prophet to give authority to its message. All right. So the earliest surviving manuscripts of the Ascension of Isaiah date from the 5th to the 12th century CE. These manuscripts are later redactions, meaning they have been edited and modified over time. The original version of the Ascension of Isaiah has been lost, and what survives are later versions. So the earliest text we have is, late composition text. It doesn't mean that it was composed during that period. It just means those are our latest surviving texts of this text. All right, the text is a combination of two separate works. The martyrdom of Isaiah, and so this section focuses on the persecution and eventual death of Isaiah. And then the ascension of Isaiah. This section details Isaiah's vision and ascent into heaven. Scholars believe that these two texts were originally independent, but were later merged into a single work. The process of redaction reflects the evolving theological concerns and literary practices of early Christian communities. All right. The first section, the martyrdom, provides discusses the persecution and execution of Isaiah under the orders of King Manasseh, describes Isaiah's faith and his martyrdom, providing a moral and theological framework for later visions. Now, the second chapter, this section, is the mystical core of the text. It recounts Isaiah's ascent through the seven heavens, where he encounters various celestial beings, including angels and demons, and receives revelations about the future coming of the Messiah and the cosmic struggle between good and evil. The text integrates themes of persecution, martyrdom, and apocalyptic vision, reflecting early Christian concerns about suffering, divine justice, and ultimate triumph of good over evil. All right. So the mystical ascent. In the narrative, Isaiah experiences a trance. We hear this, but I'm just going through it. In the narrative, Isaiah experiences a trance before King Hezekiah's court, during which he is taken up into the heavens by a sublime angel, similar to Paul's experience. As Isaiah ascends through the heavens, he encounters various spiritual beings, including Samael and his hosts, Samael being Satan. He witnesses a cosmic struggle between the forces of good and evil, reflecting early Christian dualistic beliefs. Revelations. Isaiah is shown divine secrets, including visions of the Messiah and the future redemption of humanity. These revelations are indeed intended to offer hope and assurance to believers, emphasizing the ultimate victory of good over evil. So, the vision represents an early Christian attempt to articulate the cosmic struggle, cosmic significance of Christ's mission and the ongoing struggle between the spiritual forces in the world, right? The text reflects a dualistic worldview, okay? The text reflects a dualistic worldview where the forces of good are in constant battle with the forces of evil. So you see this at one of the lower heavens where the angels are constantly in battle. This theme, it echoes similar concepts found in other apocalyptic literature, such as the Book of Revelation. The Ascension of Isaiah provides detailed descriptions of the heavenly hierarchy, offering insight into early Christians' beliefs about angels, their roles, and their interactions with humanity. Their Christology. The text includes early Christian views on the nature and role of Jesus Christ. The pocket gospel, which when we talk about in the Ascension of Isaiah, when it discusses the birth of Jesus and his early life, it's called Carrier calls it a pocket gospel because of the shortness of it. And it offers a narrative of Jesus' life, emphasizing his divine nature and mission. The pocket gospel, this brief narrative inserted into the text, is significant because it reflects early Christian attempts to harmonize their beliefs with existing Jewish traditions. It also shows how early Christians viewed the life and mission of Jesus in a cosmic context. So, like the Book of Revelations, the Ascension of Isaiah focuses on visions of heaven, cosmic battles, and the ultimate triumph of good over evil. It reflects the theological ideas that it reflects are also present in the New Testament, such as the role of Jesus as the Messiah and the concept of a cosmic struggle between good and evil. There's differences between the canonical texts. There's a mystical focus. So unlike the Gospels, which focus on the life and teachings of Jesus, the Ascension of Isaiah is more concerned with mystical vision and cosmic revelations. It's not really a historical text. It's all about the vision and the trance that Isaiah went through. It's pseudepigraphal in nature. The text claims to be authored by the prophet Isaiah, unlike the canonical text, which are attributed to the followers of Jesus or their associates. So it's kind of like a preview of what's to come from the Old Testament point of view. All right. Jonathan Knight argues that the martyrdom of Isaiah, the first part, and the ascension of Isaiah, the second part, were originally separate texts that were later combined into a single work. However, there's significant evidence that these texts were independent and only later merged, reflecting different theological and literary concerns. The Pocket Gospel. Knight suggests that the deletion of the Pocket Gospel in some manuscripts was due to anti-docetic motives, meaning it was removed to counter the belief that Jesus only appeared to be human. Now, see, Carrier does this, and he doesn't really explain. Docetism was a particular Christian view that held that Jesus came in the form of an avatar and only appeared to have a human body, but was really the divine essence appearing as human. This was how he was a perfect man, so to speak. Valentinian Gnostics would have held this view. Marcionites would have held this view, or would have adhered to the elements inside the ascension of Isaiah. Docetism. This is what this is how this is what is meant by anti-docetic, meaning that it was trying to. This would have been an effort of anti-docetic authors at trying to remove docetic elements from the manuscript, right? Counter arguments propose that the Pocket Gospel was added later rather than deleted, and that its presence in the text reflects evolving Christological debates within early Christianity. Textual redactions. The ascension of Isaiah shows a significant redaction, with later scribes adding, removing, or altering content to suit their theological perspectives. This process of redaction reflects the dynamic and contested nature of early Christian theology, as different groups sought to define and control the narrative of Christian origins. So we're really looking at battles of Christology. I said this before, and people were like, what is Christology? It's the study of Christ. Text. The ascension of Isaiah contains a prophecy about Christ's death and the divine revelation that would follow. Chapter 11 introduces a narrative that is inconsistent with earlier chapters, suggesting a later redaction. Key phrases in chapters 9 and 10 suggest a celestial event, but these are omissions from some versions, indicating possible interpolations, right? And so, honestly, what I should have done is I looked at the other versions available. I've just been really busy, and so did not have the time to confirm and then to follow up with that information, right? So, according to chapter 10, verse 12, God's voice will reveal Christ's true identity to his killers across all 7 levels of heaven. This is inconsistent with the New Testament, where no such revelation of God occurs. The killers in this context are more than likely demons and their princes in the firmament, and not humans. This divine revelation is followed by acknowledgement of Christ's identity in chapters 11, verse 23. So you would have to go back and look at that in order to confirm it, right? And then all of a sudden, chapter 11 introduces an earthly gospel narrative that doesn't align with the earlier prophecy in chapters 9 and 10. This section is believed to have been added later, as it differs in plot and literary style. Manuscript evidence support the theory that this part of chapter 11 was a later redaction. Christian writers once again adding stuff to the manuscript, and then this is something that they do consistently throughout time. They add things to confirm their position or their theological stance. This is something that's just a Christian practice. All right. 2 key phrases. They think that he is flesh and a man, and he shall descend in your form, are absent in the Latin version of the text. These omissions suggest these phrases may have been later additions to support the narrative of a physical incarnation of Christ. Remember, Docetism was a heavy version of Christianity that the Catholic or the proto-Orthodox fathers were fighting against. As a matter of fact, Paul was fighting against Docetism in saying that Christ came in a body. You understand? So there were portions of early Christians that taught that Christ did not have an actual physical body. These were the Docetists. These were versions of Christians that the proto-Orthodox fathers were arguing against. So, if chapter 11 originally concluded in line with chapters 9 and 10, it likely described Christ's death in the firmament as executed by Satan and his angels. The missing elements could include the execution of Christ by celestial beings, God's voice resounding across the heavens, the righteous ascending with Christ. These elements are not found in the later added gospel narrative of chapter 11. All right. So the redactor likely removed references to Satan's reactions, God's celestial voice, and the year and a half Jesus spent before ascending. So there's a portion of the text that says Jesus spent a year and a half. Now then, I forgot to add this part. In Against Heresies by Irenaeus, he discusses in a certain chapter that there are certain Christians that teach that Jesus lived for a year and a half after the crucifixion and taught. So when we read that in Irenaeus, let me see if I can find that. Hold on one second, because that'll be really dope. Hold on one second. Give me a moment. Let me see if I can get this up here. So what I'm doing at the moment is I am reading, uh, trying to remember off the cuff, where that is referenced in Irenaeus. I think it was either, or is it 2, 3, book 2? All right, give me one. Hold up. You're still there. I know this is like really kind of me tripping, but I need to find this really fast because I intended actually originally in including this in my discussion, but I did not. So let me go ahead and do that now. Because it is important to kind of back up 1, 3, 2. Dang. There we go. There we go. I got it. Book 1. All right. So, thank you if you are still sticking around. Let me go ahead and bring this up for you so you can know what Carrier was talking about, right? Let me go ahead and share my screen. So in Against Heresies, Irenaeus discusses certain heretics that taught that Jesus Christ lived a certain amount of days, right? And so me, man, when I'm reading people's work like this, like Richard Carrier or Dennis McDonald or something, and they make a reference to a text on where they got their information, of course, I like to cross-reference that myself to see if it's correct, and then determine and judge whether or not the information that they're sharing actually are the position that they're sharing reflects the information that they got it from, right? And so I went ahead and looked at Against Heresies, and it's book 1, chapter 2, verse 3, right? And so it says here, they further maintain that the passion which took place in the case of the 12th eon is pointed at by the apostasy of Judas, who was the 12th apostle, and also by the fact that Christ suffered in the 12th month. For their opinion is that he continued to preach for 1 year only after his baptism. The same thing must be clearly indicated by the case of the woman who suffered from an issue of blood for 1 year after his baptism. Hold a second. I'm tripping. Oh, it's 2. The production again of the uh, duodecad of the eons is indicated by the fact that the Lord was 12 years of age when he disputed with the teachers of the law, and by the election of the apostles, for these or 12. The other 18 eons are made manifest in this way, that the Lord conversed with the disciples for 18 months after his resurrection from the dead. So there were a certain group of Christians in early Christianity that said that the Lord conversed with his disciples for 18 months after the resurrection of the dead. They also affirm that these 18 eons are strikingly indicated by the first 2 letters of his name, namely Iota and Eta. In like manner, they assert that the 10 eons are pointed out by the letters Iota, which begins his name. For while the same reason they tell us the Savior said, 1 iota, 1 tittle shall by no means pass away until all be fulfilled. This is interesting because in the book, Iota and Eta is the beginning of his name, which would be Iesus or Zeus, as some people like to so warmly and lovingly say. All right, so let me stop that share, get back to the actual presentation. Coming back here, boom, boom, boom. All right, so that was, and I should have added that into the slide initially. I did not, so go ahead and forgive on that level. But moving on, the redactor, all right, these elements were probably erased because they contradicted with the Orthodox Christian narrative that later emerged. A Jesus who was killed by Satan in the sky and only appears to men in visions was likely seen as incompatible with later Christian beliefs. Both the elaborate pocket gospel and the version that omits it show signs of tampering. The version without the pocket gospel still fails to deliver the expected narrative elements from chapters 9 and 10, suggesting significant deletions. The narrative seems designed to align with Orthodox Christian beliefs, ignoring the original story elements. The story in the Ascension of Isaiah bears striking similarities to the ancient Sumerian myth of Inanna, the queen of heaven. Inanna descends from heaven, is crucified in the underworld by demons, and resurrects after 3 days. Both narratives involve descending through 7 levels, with the protagonists being humbled at each stage before their death and eventual resurrection. The parallels with Inanna's myth suggest that early Christian narratives may have been influenced by older religious stories. Understanding these changes is key to interpreting the original intent and message of the Ascension of Isaiah, right? The story of Inanna's descent shares many striking similarities with the narrative in the Ascension of Isaiah. Both involve a seven-stage descent, disrobing, crucifixion by demons, and resurrection. The similarities suggest that the author of the Ascension was likely influenced by this pre-Christian myth. All right, so that was the first part. Now, part two, it now goes into what's called the basic problem, right? Now, and this is talking about the different Jesus myth theories, right? So that part of chapter 3 is over. It's really an introduction into the ascension of Isaiah, and now he's getting into the differences between theories of Jesus. We have the mythicists that describe first Jesus was a myth who got stories about his physical life added onto him later. Or then we have the historicists who suggest Jesus was an actual historical person who had mythological stories added to him later, right? So both historicists and mythicists propose a wide range of theories about Jesus, many of which contradict each other. Despite the contradictions, both sides agree that something can be reliably affirmed once the flawed or speculative theories are set aside. Just as we can find reliable elements within historicist theories, the same approach should be applied to mythicist theories. Both historicists and mythicists have produced extreme, untenable theories. Examples include Jesus touring India, flying in North America, or fathering a royal dynasty. Similarly, mythicists have proposed theories that lack sufficient evidence or coherence. These extreme theories should be set aside, leaving only the tenable theories for serious consideration. To fairly assess mythicism, we should focus on a minimal, plausible Jesus myth theory. This approach mirrors the minimal theory of historicity, where the basic question is whether we should interpret the evidence assuming Jesus existed or did not. This minimalist approach avoids the pitfalls of elaborate and speculative theories that are easier to dismiss. Right? Many scholars have attempted to refute mythicism, but often only addressed weaker arguments or create straw man versions of the theory. Serious scholarly attempts to refute mythicism are limited and often outdated, revealing how persistent the idea has been even among experts. A more methodologically sound approach is needed to fairly assess the merits of mythicism. The historical study of Jesus would benefit from wiping the slate clean and starting over with a humbler, more informed, and methodologically sound approach. This reevaluation should focus on a minimal and plausible theory of mythicism to see how it holds up against minimal historicity. And then only after this effort can we make a definitive conclusion about the validity of mythicism or proceed with the study of the historical Jesus. The central thesis of competent mythicists is that Jesus was originally a god or celestial deity, much like other gods in ancient religions. Over time, the celestial figure was historicized, similar to how other deities like Osiris is given narrative biographies set in historical context. The Gospel of Mark, or its source, played a key role in shaping the Christian myth by crafting a meaningful and symbolic tale of Jesus drawn from the Old Testament and other literature. This is based on the theory that the Gospel of Mark was first. All right, so there are five major propositions, five core propositions to the Jesus myth theory. 1, Jesus was initially thought to be a celestial deity. 2, Jesus communicated with his followers through dreams. 3, Jesus was believed to have undergone incarnation, death, burial, and resurrection in a supernatural realm. 4, an allegorical story of Jesus was composed, placing him on earth with an earthly life, family, and companions. And 5, later communities believed or taught that the sacred story was real and historical. This is Paul. The minimal Jesus myth theory posits that if any of the first 4 propositions are true, Jesus began as a myth, not as a historical figure. The 5th proposition is already accepted by both mythicists and historicists. This theory will be tested against the minimal theory of historicity. This theory will be tested against the minimal theory of historicity to see which holds more merit, right? The alternative hypothesis 1. Jesus began as a political figure rather than a celestial deity. This hypothesis has a much lower prior probability and is harder to reconcile within the evidence in the epistles. Alternative hypothesis 2. Everything said about Jesus was an outright fabrication. This hypothesis also has a low probability due to the need to explain why the movement gained followers. The minimal Jesus myth theory offers a plausible explanation for the origins of Christianity, focusing on Jesus as a celestial deity who was later historicized. While alternative hypotheses exist, they generally have lower probabilities and face greater challenges in explaining the evidence. This approach provides a methodologically sound basis for evaluating the origins of Christianity and the figure of Jesus. So that's, my notes for chapter 3 on the historicity of Jesus. Check back again later for chapter 4, and we will just move through the texts. Peace and blessings, light and love. I'm out.